timely in so many ways, and especially with certain things on the news and everything. So I'm excited to welcome the program author and autism advocate, Dr. Tanya Paparella. Dr. Tanya, thanks for stopping by. You're the author then More Than Hope, and I appreciate you coming on, a co-author of it for young children on the autism spectrum. I really look forward to this conversation because I really had to go through this working as a teacher, also a BSc and a TSS, and multiple ways. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you so much for inviting me onto your show. I'm really honored to be here, excited to talk with you.
So let's talk about your background first a little bit, and we'll go right into the book.
So I am faculty at UCLA. I am a professor in the Department of Child Psychiatry at UCLA. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I have over 30 years treating young children on the autism spectrum. So I run a clinic at UCLA. It's a short-term intervention program for very young children, and I have many years of experience in that.
All right. So, and especially, it's very interesting, before we can get into questions about the book, autism, because it's such a large umbrella, it's difficult for people to understand the different forms of autism, especially where it used to be more easier to figure out different ways. We talk about Asperger's or highly functioning autism versus putting them all under one umbrella. Would you agree?
Very much. And things have changed over the years. So yes, it can be very confusing.
And there's so many different forms, for sure. So let's go, Doctor, the title of your book is More Than Hope for Young Children on the Autism Spectrum. What do you mean by more than hope?
When parents first suspect that their child is on the autism spectrum or have just received a diagnosis of autism, many are desperate to find immediate help. They have a little one who means the world to them. And to even begin questioning that their child may not be developing in a way that they expect can be terrifying. Beyond just trying to cope with all of their emotions, family, and everyday life, they now have to find out what this means for their child and their family and what they should do. And you can understand that many have an intense urgency to do something immediately to heal their child. So we know that early intervention can be extremely powerful, but actually accessing treatment can take months with long waiting lists. And then further, the internet and AI can provide a wealth of easily accessible information and resources, but there are so many different points of view and competing information. So this can all be very confusing, and parents hold so much hope for their child, but making decisions as to what to believe and where to start can be overwhelming. So this book empowers parents with where to begin and how to begin. And it describes powerful step-by-step intervention strategies to change areas of early child development most impacted by autism. And the teaching strategies are evidence-based, they're practical, and they can be used in everyday activity. And so the book offers families the opportunity to do more than just hope for a child's successful future. It directly empowers them by providing critical knowledge and intervention tools towards long-lasting benefits for each child and their family.
And they need this, parents, right? Because this is a very challenging to deal with, having especially a small child with autism, to understand how they're different, and to really not know that the way I was taught to parent really isn't going to work here. And I really have to learn so many different things that maybe I wasn't taught as a child, and to understand the spectrum and understand their needs and what they really need.
It's a lot. It's a lot, for sure. And I really feel for parents. You can only imagine having that experience and now having to figure it all out.
And figuring it all out and knowing what's right and what's the wrong thing to do. And I couldn't imagine now. When I worked, first experience autism through tutoring. Then the second was working as a TSS, and then also tutoring young children with autism, and also being a developmental therapist. I read the books. I didn't go to social media because there was no social media at that time, 20 years ago, or even more than 20 years ago. So the knowledge was going and picking up a book from Barnes & Noble and reading it, and reading the best books that were out there. What misinformation's out there now that was not 21, 22 years ago?
I know there's so much information out there, right? now. We have AI, we have the internet, parents can get so much information from one another across the world, right? So it's unbelievable how much information is out there. And it's wonderful, but it's confusing at the same time.
Yeah, and that confusion can really cause a lot of challenges for a parent, for sure, and what they're to do and what not to do in so many aspects. Totally. Parents often feel overwhelmed, as we talked about. After receiving an autism diagnosis, what should they start? Where should they start once that happens?
Yes, you can only imagine, right? Parents often feel super overwhelmed, and they often feel that they're to blame, that they are directly responsible for their child's diagnosis. And I cannot emphasize enough, parents do not cause their child's autism. So they can start by grounding themselves in knowledge, not blame, and recognize that early intervention is key, and focus intervention on the areas that are at the core of autism. I think that's where they can start.
And the areas core in autism is important because they have to be educated. They have to really see once the diagnosis is not a death sentence. And it sure as heck doesn't mean that it's going to be find a book and you'll figure it out. There's so much more to it, and each child is different in your work with children with autism.
Absolutely. We always say, if you've seen one child with autism, you've seen one child. Every child is different. Yeah. Every family is different. But oh my gosh, there is so much hope. There's so much potential. What I want is for parents to understand that this is the beginning of a wonderful journey, and that they really can be empowered to help shape that journey.
And shaping that journey is an interesting thing, because when you're shaping it, you're understanding particularly where to go and when to do it. And that's why we're going to talk about in your book, especially if we're talking early, this is an early diagnosis, right? I don't even know what age now they're looking at in a diagnosis of autism. How young do they diagnose a child with autism?
We can diagnose children very young now, certainly by the age of 18 months, sometimes younger. So yes, we've got better and better at diagnosing children very young.
And in your book, you emphasize the importance of early intervention. Why is this so critical?
In the early years of life, the brain is like wet clay. It's shaping, it's forming, it's absorbing at an incredible rate. So when we intervene early, we're not just teaching skills, we're rewiring the brain to learn, to connect, to communicate. It's like planting a young tree. If you guide its growth when it's young, it stands tall, it's strong, it's flexible. If you wait, the branches are harder to bend. And that's what early, consistent intervention gives your child. A future with stronger roots and greater possibilities. So the earlier we act, the greater the transformation. And that's really what I tell parents.
And early jump on this, but no, there's a lot of work involved in this. It's not going to be this easy thing, or really impossible thing too. So there's two different sides of the coin, right? With where people, once they get that diagnosis of their child and then start the early intervention process, right?
Yes. It's not going to be an easy thing. It's not going to be quick, but with consistent focus, there can be really significant change. And so our role is to really help parents and families to really marshal themselves and their support system in terms of how do we make this happen in a way that is sustainable and significant, and really so we can help the family and the child achieve maximum success.
You mentioned targeting the center of the core of autism. Can you talk a little bit more about?
Yes. When I think about intervention for young children with autism spectrum disorder, a big question is, what are the early predictors of successful development? In other words, what can we target now to achieve maximum change immediately, and also for long-lasting benefit for the future? So instead of letting autism take hold and progress, we can focus intervention on the areas of development that are considered to be at the core of autism. These are communication and language, social development, and what I call appropriate responding to the everyday environment. These are the areas where children need specific targeted help. And if we aim our intervention at these areas, we're targeting the center of where autism takes hold. Parents and families can learn strategies to do this. So in the book, we give an introductory set of go-to practical strategies that are easy to follow and known to work. They're parent-family teaching tools that parents and caregivers can use in everyday activities. So, for example, one of the areas of social development, which is one of the core areas that I mentioned, in social development, one of the areas we focus on is play. Nearly all children with autism need help learning how to play, playing with toys and playing with other children. And guess what? The research shows that better play is linked to better language. So targeting play is powerful. So we have one full chapter on teaching play in a way that's easy for parents to understand and apply.
And that is so important because language develops through play.
That's right. Language develops through play, and better play leads to better language for many different reasons. But look how powerful that is, right? Something as simple as play, one would think it's simple. Not only is one impacting that area directly, but actually impacting language. It's huge.
And that's the thing that I guess, my child's not playing, so I guess he's not interested, or he or she is not interested in play, then I guess I'm going to not play with them. Oh, that's a big mistake.
And what parents don't realize is that actually their child wants to play, they just don't know how to. And so we need to teach them how to play. And going even a little step further, play is linked to language, and language is linked to social outcome. If we target play, we get better language, we get better social outcome. And so that's cycling back when I said one of the big questions is, what are the early predictors of development? Oh my gosh, look at that right there.
Can you share a story that illustrates the transformation possible when families apply what you teach?
I'd love to. Diego and his parents immediately come to mind. I met him about 3 years ago, and he was 2.5 years old when I met him, and he was not talking at the time. And his parents were desperate for him to talk. And I wasn't surprised, as the single most important goal for most parents is for their child to talk. Understandable. But many parents think that the most direct route is to immediately work on their child's verbal language. And the first thing I explained to Diego's parents is that it was likely that Diego did not understand why he should talk. Many children on the autism spectrum do not understand what communication is and why they should care about it. So when he wanted something, he usually had a tantrum, and parents would spend a lot of time trying to guess at what he wanted. So I explained to them that a more efficient, faster route to develop his communication would be to target his nonverbal communication first. And so we started by teaching him to point and to use that point to ask the things he really wanted, things that he cared about. So Diego loved apple juice. And every time he requested for his juice, I asked parents to provide the verbal language for him. I want juice. And so his parents were all in, and they made sure that he pointed for what he wanted every opportunity they could find. After play outside, when he wanted a snack, at meal times, bath times, on walks. And Diego learned quickly that just by pointing, he could request for juice. So parents learned that the first step was for Diego to understand the value of communication. That when he communicated with others, he would get something in return. And as he became increasingly competent at pointing, he started to verbalize something that sounded like, I want. And I will never, ever forget that day. We were so incredibly excited. We celebrated like you cannot imagine. And that was the beginning of the pathway to him talking. And soon after that, he began approximating more words. Then he started putting his words together into short phrases, and just so exciting. Parents then got him into early intervention. He continued to thrive. And he's now a happy 5-year-old. He looks indistinguishable from his
Tanya, are you still there?
age. It was using evidence-based methods, and it was being consistent. And I love that story.
You got cut off for a second. Can you add where he is now? And congratulations. So this is the thing that I remember when I was a teacher. When you're able to do something that this amazing. So you said he was indistinguishable from the other children at 5. So my question to you, because you did cut off after that, and we can add a little bit more to this because I'm just excited about what you do. Your methods really don't give up on the child, because ultimately without early intervention, he could have been nonverbal, right? Potentially. And worse, it goes down the road to not being able to be in society. So that's where you're trying to say this early intervention is so important. Are you seeing the kids, and this is a question you wouldn't have expected, but I think now my academic background, you're like, oh, do you see an example of a situation where when you see other kids that have lower form autism do you see most of the time it was because of lack of early intervention?
Sometimes it can be. Every child is different. And for some children, early intervention makes all the difference. For other children, they may have different barriers that may not be necessarily related to early intervention. And those are barriers that may be holding them back. Certainly, early intervention can still make significant difference for those children as well. And we want to make sure that every single child achieves their own maximum potential. So it can vary.
Wow. Has there ever been research done of a child diagnosed with autism that has not had early intervention versus early intervention?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And over again, we really see that early intervention just makes a huge difference for children.
I knew that answer. I just wanted to...
Of course you did.
I've been as an educational advocate, I fought for families with autism years and years ago. I missed that part of it, but I went into the business side of things. But as a teacher, after I was teaching, I had a tutoring business, and I went in and did those. And this is where I feel that every child can learn, every adult can learn, and we need to be able to accommodate their needs. And I wish that the accommodations, I am dealing with currently an intern that's visually impaired, and yet none of the programs or the social media platforms are adapting to that need. And this is what we need to do, is we got to constantly look to be the advocates for growth for anyone with any exceptionality.
I absolutely agree with you. And thank you for taking all of that into consideration. I wish that more people would, really.
Yeah. With AI, we shouldn't have any excuses anymore.
I agree. Absolutely.
I'd love to partner on something with AI with you. I'm big into AI, and I'd love to provide any research or any of my contacts involving, if you're looking at, that's got to make things even better in the early intervention phase.
Yes, undoubtedly. And yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah, okay, great. In your experience, what is the biggest misconception about young children with autism?
I'd say one of the biggest misconceptions is that children with autism cannot form deep, loving connections. And it's simply not true. They can. And they do, and it just might look different. I've seen children who initially seem to be in their own world, and they go on to develop wonderful connections and loving relationships. And it's so heartwarming to see them run into their parents' arms with joy at the end of the day. They want to show them the art project that day that they made at school. And then another misconception, just as we've been talking about, is that their potential is limited. And I've learned over and over again, never underestimate a child on the spectrum. With the right intervention, they have the capacity for enormous.
You are so right about that. And that's interesting you talked about. That's something I think in your research showing that they don't have any emotion, that kids they don't have any empathy. And all these things, it's not true. They feel pain. They feel suffering. They feel sadness, especially we're talking different forms. And it really upsets me when someone paints a picture and says that person has it because the way they interact or act. No, you cannot pinpoint it off of one thing. And that just shouldn't make anyone feel different because of that. And I wish we can come up with a way in society to help special needs children and adults better. I really do. And I'm sure that's part of your advocacy in so many ways of writing this book, to help them, but also see that every child can learn. And that's bottom line, bar none. It just might be a different way to teach them.
Absolutely.
And I like the AI thing. I know a lot of teachers are anti-AI. It is the best thing for special needs kids if it can be done in the right way for them, especially with adaptations and modifications to curriculum. There should be no excuse that a regular ed teacher said they can't teach a special education student. No excuse now.
It certainly can be a super helpful tool. I absolutely agree with you.
Okay. I just bringing that up because that's the whole thing. I want more creating some tools to be able to have people that are visually impaired to come up with tools that would make it so that they're more capable to do social media management work with Media Giant Productions, which is my agency, and things like that, which they don't give those tools right now. And I'm definitely talking to my AI team about that, because we need to be able to provide a work environment to everyone to have the joy of work, and everyone should love work, and everyone should have the ability to do work in some sort of way. Bottom line.
I love how supportive you are. It really is exceptional.
Thank you. What role does family play in child's progress? We know this is for sure beyond therapists and professionals, because at the end of the day, a therapist can meet with them once a week or maybe every day, but there's 22 hours of the day where that therapist or professional is not there for them to work with their kids.
Exactly right. And we know family is the foundation, right? And therapists may see a child for a few hours each week, but parents and siblings and grandparents are there every single day. And there's no doubt that in many ways, parenting will need to be different than parenting a typically developing child. Children with autism need more predictability. They need a consistent schedule. They usually thrive with repetition. And many need more practice than other children to learn new concepts and to apply their knowledge in different environments as well. So parenting must suddenly include a great deal more teaching. And I say to parents, think of your role for the next few years, not just as a parent, but as a specialist parent. Put your mind and energy to becoming good at implementing the strategies explained in the book during routines like meals, bath time, changing a diaper, when you're out for a walk. Be creative in finding opportunities to practice new skills with your child throughout each day. And when families learn strategies and weave them into everyday life, that's often when a child's growth accelerates.
If you could leave parents with one message from your book, what would that be?
You can play a major role in changing your child's development. Yes, it will require new learning and challenges on your part. It will require ongoing persistence, patience, focus, and creativity, but it can also bring enormous satisfaction and results.
All right. This is a pleasure. Tell my listeners and viewers where's the best place people can get the book.
I would say Amazon right now is the easiest place to get the book.
Oh, fantastic. And I think that this is a tremendous thing. And what do you think makes you different to other books that were written about early childhood with autism?
Thank you for that question. I think that the book is written very much with parents at the forefront. It's very warm. It's very loving. It's supportive. And I take research and distill it into very parent-friendly strategies. It's extremely parent-supportive and parent-friendly. And I purposely made the book small and short so that parents can literally put it in their pocket in a purse or pick it up to read 2 pages right before they go to bed. It's that friendly, and I'm trying to make those strategies as easy to use as possible.
Thank you again, Dr. Tanya. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
All right. You're listening and watching The Neil Haley Show. We'll be back in